Welcome back. You're watching African Perspective here on SABC News, Channel 404. We're talking about leaders, in this case African leaders, whether they should be honoured while they're still alive or posthumously. Of course, this comes on the back of Amnesty International criticising Myanmar's leader Aung San Suu Kyi, saying that she has disappointed them. Shenilla Mohamed is Executive Director, Amnesty International SA. She joins us in the studio. Izak Khomo is an Africa Analyst. Thank you both to you for joining us. Perhaps let's start with you, Ms. Mohamed, with Aung San Suu Kyi. There's been some backlash, some saying that what was your expectation? She has to play a balancing act between the military and civilian relationship.
Well, thank you so much. You know, for us, I mean, I think that, as you're aware, Aung San Suu Kyi herself underwent a lot of, human rights violations herself. And, you know, before we even awarded her with the Ambassador of Conscience in 2009, she was our prisoner of conscience. So we were fighting for her release. We were out there, you know, putting pressure on the military to release her. And, of course, it was while she was still under house arrest or military arrest that we awarded her with this Ambassador of Conscience. That was in 2009. It was only in 2012 that she was actually able to accept it when she came out of jail, out of house arrest. And I think, you know, for us, it's, when people say it's an award, you know, I think, you know, for us it's an ambassador of conscience. So what we're saying is that you are somebody who has had their own rights violated, and you need to go out there and you need to make sure that you do whatever you can.
So, Mr. Khomo, it comes down to recognition. We have what some may say is a similar case here in South Africa, the Free State wanting to honour Jonathan Liabu, and there's objection from some quarters about that. Is there similarities in the reasons why people are given accolades and whether or not they live up to it?
Exactly. I mean, with the situation of Liabu Jonathan, I think I'll take it from the ANC point of view. I think our viewers should know that the ANC of Free State want to have a statue of Liabu Jonathan, who was the Lesotho Prime Minister, to honor him for the work he has done towards the ANC. But I mean to say that there's a letter which comes from Musisidi, which actually sort of spells out what Liabu Jonathan really was. And I've got relatives who were killed by Liabu Jonathan. I'm talking about from experience, from that perspective too. And Liabu Jonathan, I don't know what they honor him for, because basically he took over power by force. Yeah? And he's the person who actually started the confusion of Lesotho by abrogating the constitution, politicizing the army. And also he sent many Lesotho elite intellectuals into exile. And Lesotho has not recovered from his rule. So basically you ask yourself now, I mean you tell yourself that basically this statue is going to be built for political expediency. And that's the fault of some of these awards. So
let's talk about the political expediency. Ms. Mohamed, there are those who say it suited the West and the media at large, or those who are in favour of Aung San Suu Kyi and anti the Myanmar government. But they're the paradoxes of leadership. Here she is in government now and has to mediate to make sure that she acts as opposed to be spending more time talking.
Well, you know, for us, it's the fact that she's done, I mean, we feel that the rights of the Rohingya people, or what's happening, the atrocities against the Rohingya people, not only is she not stepping up and speaking about them, but she's also acting as a block to the UN investigators who are coming down. As you know, the Human Rights Council passed a recommendation in October to say that, you know, evidence needs to be collected and the crimes against humanity need to be presented to the International Criminal Court. And UN investigators have been trying to go down there and gather evidence. She and her government have been blocking them. So for us, it's not just about the fact that, you know, it's not an expedience. There are people on the ground who are suffering. 720,000 of them have crossed over into Bangladesh. Women are being raped. Children are being brutalized. People are being murdered. You know, and she came into government in 2016. We're not expecting miracles, okay, but we are expecting, at the very least, for her to stand up and say, look, we are not going to tolerate this. We are going to make sure that something is being done. And that is not happening at all.
I'd like to come to you, Mr. Khomo, and talk about the people who give our leaders awards and what their ultimate objective is. I mean, you're speaking earlier on of how some people see Leaboa Jonathan. There are those who speak about Albert Luthuli and his role in democratization of Southern Africa. There's Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. What is the main objective and how should we view these awards?
Well, I think, okay, I'll just sort of, before I answer that, I'll go back, I'll come and sort of contribute to this topic here. You know, I think Our Lady, Aung San Suu Kyi, she's actually trapped because, I mean to say, there's the real politique of the country. The military is in power and also the sentiment of the Burmese. You know, there's a very big animosity between the Burmese against the Rohingyas, which actually comes from the Second World War. In the Second World War, the Burmese, actually, they were pro-Japan. The Rohingyas was a group of people who were pro-British. That's the thing that people do not know. And the Rohingyas started getting a problem when the military took over. And Our Lady, her father was one of the big generals and one of the heroes of the Burmese nation. So she's trapped in that, from a political and a human rights issue. But again, coming to this issue of awards. Awards are very funny. I mean to say that organizations that give awards, some of them, I mean in certain circumstances, they've been given, as I said, for political expediency. We'll talk of our own Nobel Prize laureate. I'm talking about Chief Albert Luthuli. Chief Albert Luthuli, when he was given the Nobel Peace Prize, I mean, South Africans, black South Africans, they actually sort of celebrated for once we are being heard and our situation is going to be solved. But did people ask themselves that why was he being given that prize?
Very, very quickly, why do you think that was the case?
He was given the prize because basically that was the time when the ANC and the PAC actually sort of decided to go on an armed struggle. And Chief Albert Luthuli went and said that he was a non-violent. And as usual, the liberal project was this, that the armed struggle should be put on the side. So they honor a person who was going for a thing there. So to kill the militancy and the radical nature of the struggle.
So to come back, let's speak Nobel Prizes. Aung San Suu Kyi herself, there are people calling that she be stripped of her prize. But there are those who say, but she's done a lot. The 1975 State Protection Act and the 1950 Emergency Provisions Act, that she's been very central to ensure that those are repealed. Has she not done anything then, in your eyes?
No, we're not saying she hasn't. I mean, we gave her the award at the time when we thought that, she, like everybody else, there was a lot of hope pinned in her. There was a lot of belief that she would come and make the difference. And I mean, I have to disagree with my colleague that she's sort of caught between a rock and a hard place. I understand it's a difficult environment, but Amnesty's been on the ground for 2 years, monitoring the situation on the ground, monitoring what's been going on. There are things that she can do, which she is not doing.
But is what Mr. Khomo not saying that don't be ahistorical in your approach?
I agree. No, we agree. We totally understand that it's a difficult situation. But one of the things that really worries us is the fact that not only is she not doing the bare minimum. I mean, she has a majority in Parliament. There's things that can be done. But her government is also inciting violence against Rohingya. So when we say that they are now part of the problem, that's exactly what we're talking about. It's not just that she's not doing anything or that she's caught between a rock and a hard place, but they are now part of the incitement of violence against the Rohingya. And if you hear the words that are used by her own people to describe the Rohingya people, they refer to them as thorns that need to be pulled out, as fleas. I mean, that's the same rhetoric we heard during the Rwandan massacre, where people were being called cockroaches. And so for us, the thing that really made us disassociate ourselves was not that she's caught between a rock and a hard place and we don't understand the history. It's that they have now become part of the violation of human rights.
Mr. Khomo, is there a tendency by Africans to sometimes spiritualize leaders who come in post-colonial era at a transformational phase? And I'm looking at the Uhuru phase of leaders in Africa, some of whom are in the annals of history as having done amazing work, but that has been retracted. Some ask, why do we even have certain people in our list of great leaders?
Well, there were many people of great leaders. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, to say there are great leaders like Nyerere, there are great leaders like Lumumba.
They say, why do we still then talk about Idi Amin? Why do we still talk about them in that collective?
Well, Idi Amin is not in the same collective as Nyerere. He will never be.
I'm just talking in terms of era. This is why I'm asking about.
Yeah, but I mean to say that I don't understand, because what I was trying to really say, because I mean to say there are leaders. I mean, a leader is being, he comes up to be awarded anything due to the people's wishes, I mean, and the people's love for the person. Yeah, it's not more that it's a thing that's not supposed to happen by a group of people like the ANC. Yeah. People like Nyerere, they are really very popular and they are loved by the people. Idi Amin basically is problematic. But again, coming to my compatriot here, I mean to say that Aung San Suu Kyi, basically, she is being politically pragmatic. She will never do it because the national sentiment is racist. It's just like in Bangladesh where you had the Biharis. Yeah, the Biharis were Muslim, and that was not even a religious thing. It was not a sectarian thing. The Biharis were Muslims who came from India, but they were in eastern Pakistan, yeah, and they actually supported the West Pakistani authorities. But after the war, those guys until today, they're still living in refugee camps. There were 300,000 of them who have not even got citizenship. So now that's the thing where politicians, they will not come up with on human rights issues. They're going to look at the hard, real politic and look at where the votes are. And that is it. So
the question then for me, Ms. Mohamed, is, and this is what I'm basically referring to about the dualities of leadership. There's the African or foreign influences of leadership models. Then how do we then choose the ones that we should pay homage to? They're leaders who are said to be underrated.
Look, I mean, you know, I think that you know, leadership is really got to be about the difference they make to the lives of the people. So, you know, we have the Nyereres of the world who not only made a difference to the lives of his own people, but the difference to the lives of those who were fighting for freedom at that time. And then you have, you know, people like Madiba who gave up, you know, most of his life for the freedom of this country. And again, Aung San Suu Kyi, again, you know, she was somebody who really stood up for her principles. But I think, you know, leadership doesn't stop when you are now free, when things are now free. And I think that's where the mistake comes in. Because, I mean, for a leader, unfortunately, when you take up a leadership role, you have got a role to play. And that role has got to go beyond the momentary thing, and it's got to be a consistent leadership. And I agree that politics is difficult, and you know, treading that line is difficult, but that's what leadership is about. With Aung San Suu Kyi, I mean, you know, notwithstanding the difficulty of the environment she's in, the bare minimum she could have done was allow the UN evidence gathering body to come in, and they blocked that. So for me, I mean, that in itself is for us problematic.
But there are those who say that she is still committed to implementing the recommendations of the Kofi Annan-led Advisory Commission on Rakhine State. So how do you say that she's blocking efforts?
Well, we've got researchers on the ground, we've got people on the ground. So, you know, with Amnesty, when we speak, we don't speak according to media reports or whatever. We gather our own data. Okay. We go onto the ground and we gather our own data. So this is our own analysis.
So, Mr. Khomo, let's come back to the issue of the African leadership mold or role. How do we ensure that the accolades given actually incentivize those leaders to carry on with the work for which they've been recognized, and that the communities that they serve actually benefit from those?
You see, one thing I'm sad about Africa, I'll come again, people may disagree with me, is this, that most of the accolades or the condemnations of African leaders, you know, it's been done by outside bodies. You know, I mean to say that basically people should be, should actually be held in high esteem by the people themselves. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you find many leaders who have been, who have been condemned by mainstream media. But I think it's high time that Africa has its own yardsticks, and also to measure their own leaders
instead
of relying on Western media.
It's a conversation we'll continue with yourselves and our viewers. At African Perspective, just remember that Shenilla Mohamed, Executive Director of Amnesty International SA, Izak Khomo, who is an Africa analyst. Well, that's it from us on African Perspective this week. Thank you so much for taking part and sharing your views. Next week, we'll be looking at the resolutions and reforms of the African Union.